Hi and welcome to this After Effects workshop, and in particular we're working with CS6 After Effects here, and we're going to be looking at one of After Effects' biggest improvements in several years, which is the ability to handle 3D in compositions. So we're going to look first of all at an easy way to get you involved in using some 3D objects, and that's using the text tool, which can create nice real 3D text. Before I've used to use like duplicated layers, and that caused issues with render time, and also it was never quite a real 3D object. So this is a real way of handling 3D text straight from the package without any plugins or anything in After Effects CS6. So let's get started, and the first thing I'm going to do is just start a new composition. Now for me, I'm doing lots of web work, and 1366 pixels by 768 pixels is becoming the standard screen size you should use for that. You can use, I don't mind which settings you want to use, to be honest, because it won't affect this. You could go HD. In fact, I'm going to go HD TV 1080. And I'm going to choose a different background color as well. I'm going to choose perhaps a blue, and that's important. You don't really choose a black at the moment, because I want to show you some features about how you can use reflection now in After Effects CS6 as well on text. So if I click OK there, I've got my new composition, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go up here and get the text tool, the type tool. If you haven't got the same layout as this, I'm working with inside the standard workspace here. You can always come along here and change it if you want to match my layout exactly. And I'm going to get the horizontal type tool, and over here I have the character settings, which I'm just going to play with a bit. I don't mind which font you want to choose, so choose something that you think suits what you want. Let's have a type here, and obviously as I'm working at 1080, I need to get quite a decent font size here to be seen. Okay, so that's a terrible font choice. I want something perhaps a little bit bolder, so we can see what's going on with the 3D layers a bit better. I'm just going to bring that up. So once you've chosen your font, you need to choose your color. So I'm actually just going to highlight it all again by double clicking on it, and I'm going to choose perhaps a yellow. And there we go. This is how we're going to start. That's a very 80s kind of look there. Now if we come down to the timeline here, you'll notice that the function to turn it into 3D, if you've used 3D before, isn't actually available at the moment. And there should be a little box here with a little square box above it indicating that you can turn on 3D for that layer. So what you have to do, if you ever have any issues with these switches missing here, what you do is you right click, go to columns, and you activate switches, and here come my switches that allow me to use the 3D options and other things as well, such as motion blur if you wish, which is a very useful tool. So the first thing I'm going to do is just show you by using this little arrow down here. If I click on that, you can see that there are various options available for the text layer, such as I could add a path to it, I can position it, scale it, rotate it, you know, adjust the opacity there. But there's nothing really here for 3D at the moment. And say what you could do with the position, there's only an X and Y position available. So what I do to activate the 3D for this layer is just underneath this square box, I just tick that, and suddenly up you'll notice you also get something called material options. So inside transform now I have the Z rotation, Y rotation, I can position in X, Y and Z as well. So I can change the depth of the object rather than just scaling it. And in material options here you also have the option to accept shadows, and you can affect the shininess of the object, the intensity of the light coming off it and things. So that's quite a useful tool as well. But in here there's still nothing completely different to CS5 and earlier versions that would allow me to transform this into a real 3D object. And that's because what we need to do is change the composition settings. And if I go to advanced, Down here in Renderer, there is also a Ray Trace 3D renderer. And that's a useful thing, not just because it allows us to really render in 3D, but if you've used programs such as 3ds Max before, you'll be familiar with the Ray Trace 3D engine. And you can sort of bring your 3ds objects into here very easily. Okay, it gives me a little bit of a warning about what it can do. So let's just take a look at that alert. The Ray Trace 3D renderer enables extruding and beveling of text and shapes. And that's vector shapes, and that's what we're going to be using here. It can accept reflections and refractions from you can use an environment layer to shine onto it, and you can also do things with curved footage layers. So let's have a look at this then. So down here we've got geometry options. And what I can do is, if I open this now, I have bevels I can add, and I can add also extrusion to the object. So I'm working on a laptop here, and I've got a more powerful desktop, and this is quite a powerful laptop actually, but working inside 3D can cause quite a lot of issues with rendering, in the sense of the power and the system may hang a little bit for a while it renders effects and things. So if you find that that's an issue and that it's freezing a little bit, you can come down here and change the rendering from full to half, and you'll see it's just analysing it there. You'll notice it's taking a lot longer to analyse just even the text. Down to third, and you can see sort of like some degradation on the edge of the text there, and pixelation. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go up to full first of all, and we'll see how that affects the system while I do this. So first of all, let's bring up some extrusion depth. Now, I probably cut a little bit there, because what happened was it took probably about 15 seconds to render that change. If I come up to the top here now and choose the orbit camera tool, and then go layer, new, camera, and just choose any camera for the moment, put it in the environment. You'll notice that when I left click and drag on the stage, you can see my object is actually a thicker object. So this normally would be about a pixel thick, and you can actually see now that we've increased the size of the pixels going back. There's no difference in color at the moment to it, so we're going to add some shadow to this object to see it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to layer, new, light, and I'm just going to click OK. And now you can see that the text is accepting the lighting. If I move it up, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the point of interest, and shift it off screen. And then, as this is After Effects, you can animate pretty much anything. So if I go to the light, transform, with my playhead at the beginning of the timeline, I'm just going to click on the little swatch watch, which is the keyframe, move along to 4 seconds, grab the point of interest and drag it just over here. You'll notice that by scrubbing the playhead, I'm actually animating a shadow across it as well. So you can see that that object really is 3D. However, the 3D in this program does have some limitations compared to proper 3D modeling software, such as you can't add textures to set, so I couldn't make that all bubbly and things like that. You can also add bevel. So just come down here, you can choose your bevel type from a hard angle to a concave and a convex. I'm going to choose a concaved, and now just increase the depth. And you can create some really interesting effects. I mean, that's already looking loads better. Right, so now let's try and cast a background onto this object. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get my lighting, and I just want to bring the point of interest back to the start so it's actually on the object. So let's have a look. There. I'm going to bring it around a bit on the x-axis. Remember, the cone faces where the actual light is pointing. I'm just going to bring mine out here. And perhaps aim it a little bit more that way. And you can see now the light's actually hitting in between and got a focus over here a bit more. So you can really see that each individual letter is a 3D object. Right, now you'll need to get some sort of image to go in the background. So if you wanted to go onto the internet and get a picture perhaps of some sky or a background or something, that's fine. So what I'm going to do is just go to File, Import, File, and on my desktop I've got an image called Blue Sky. There we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab, let me just close up these little arrows here, I'm going to grab this Blue Sky JPEG and drag it down to the timeline here. Now, one of the interesting things about After Effects CS6 is the ability to set an environment layer. And if you've used other programs, 3D programs before, you'll know that environment layers allow you to do things such as reflection, which can vastly improve the realism of the objects that you're working with. And often are used in things like metals and plastics and things like that. Now, After Effects CS6 can set an environment layer as well. But don't forget, this environment layer could be a composition, so it could be a video as well. Obviously things like that do also somewhat increase the render time, but you can create some amazing effects within video and 3D text. So if I just right click on this JPEG here that I've brought in for the background layer, and I go to environment layer and click that, you'll see that it stretched the image, but it's now become almost like a world around this object. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back inside of my text here, and I'm going to go down to material options. And with that selected, you'll notice that appear in reflections is on. And I can come down here, and there are many settings, and it's always a good idea just to have a play around yourself with these settings that you can adjust, and you can add reflection to it, and you can make it more shiny or more metally. Let's just up the reflection intensity first of all to say 55%. You can see it's changing already, and you can see now that although yellow and blue, the blue of the sky is reflecting in here and the white of the clouds is there, you can still make out that it's actually got a reflection. I can increase the intensity again. That's up to 100% now. And this will take longer to render as well. And you can see now the objects become really shiny. If I just zoom out a little bit, and I'm going to grab my light, I'm just going to bring it in a bit and change the point of interest. You can perhaps see it a little bit better. Let's just see what the shininess can do as well. So if I just build that up a bit, if I just increase that a bit, and you can see it's become a little bit crisper due to the shininess. And it's starting to look almost like a metal from there. Okay, so what I want you to do now is just play around with that for a little bit and just see if you can see what sort of effects you can get out of different objects and different colors and different backgrounds, and do that for just 10 minutes or so, and then we'll continue. Okay, so now you've had a bit of a play with some of those tools, you should get an idea of what you can do. The best way to learn is to just play around with some of the tools yourself. However, now we're about to look at one of the other new features of After Effects CS6, which is absolutely amazing, and that is camera tracking. And camera tracking was available in previous versions of After Effects, but it was a lot more complex and took a lot more time. Now you can create stunning effects really easily. and the tracking is absolutely super smooth. It's a fantastic tool. You could do it with plugins before, but this is as good as, if not better than, any of those sort of plugins that I've used before. So what I'm going to do is go to File, Import File, and I'm going to get a piece of footage which has camera motion on it. And I've got one here called Flip. And this is actually a piece of footage from Apex longboarding. Now, it's important that you realize that this is camera tracking, not motion tracking. So I'm going to be tracking the camera movement. In other words, I'm going to be tracking the depth of the camera and the left and right motion of the camera. I'm not motion tracking where I might track an object, in the sense this an object that's always in view. This is an object that is just passing by. So the X and the Y are quite easy. Obviously, it's the up and down, the vertical and the horizontal coordinates. But it also does a pseudo 3D effect where it tracks the depth of objects as well, which is absolutely stunning. So with this file imported, for my students, you can find this on Moodle, and it's called a Flip, called just Flip, sorry, Flip. And I'm going to right click, and I'm going to go New Comp from Selection. And here's the clip. I'm just going to take that up to full a second, so you might have yours on full already. And this is the clip. You see, it does a flip. Nice land. And what I'm going to track is I'm going to track some text that's going to come in from one side and pass through. I'm going to have it underneath here, pass through there and over there. Okay. So the first step is to come up here to animation. Make sure you've got your layer selected, animation, and track camera. And what it's doing now is it's analyzing positions of objects moving in the background of this video. Now that can take some time, so I'm going to pause it. As it says up here, it's done 15 frames of 86. So I'll just pause and then we'll continue when it's analyzed. Okay, so now what we've got is a rendered background. And if you look very carefully, you might see there are lots of little dots around. Now I can change the size of these so I can see them a bit better. And if I click rendered track points, it will also show me ones that are there throughout. And if you're not happy with these, I kind of wanted some to be tracked here on this corner here of that there. And I don't seem to have any tracking points that analyze there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to reset it and let it analyze again. You can also help it by selecting the solve method if it's a normal shot, if it's quite a flat scene, or if it's a tripod pan as well, and that will help detect what sort of points it'll be selecting. Okay, so it's having trouble selecting this sort of object here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose a mostly flat scene, because that's what sort of scene this is. Well, I can't find the ones I'm really looking for. I really want something on the end here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose a detailed analysis. And that's going to give me a much more in-depth analysis of this background. Now, what I've done here is I've also chosen quite a difficult scene for it to analyze, just to show you the limitations that are possible. The limitations that this program, that this analysis can have. In previous attempts, I've tried to do things like the Red Bull X Games, very fast pans following very fast movement, and it isn't able to get hold of the background image and points. So this is probably round about its kind of limit of sort of like how fast you can actually track and analyze this sort of background. Now you'll notice that this type of render, when it's doing a detailed analysis, is obviously going to take a lot more time. This is a 3-second clip, I believe, and it's taking well over 3 minutes to do this sort of analysis. So I'm just going to pause this and then we will continue. Okay, so after a detailed analysis, you can see now I've got far more points here to play with. And in fact, there's some real nice points right on the edge here, which I think I might use. Just in case you wanted to see if there's better ones here, I'm just going to do an auto detect. We'll just play around with these. Now, you might not need to go through this much fuss, because when I was doing when I was doing this the first time, just as a bit of a test before I show you this, I didn't need to choose a detailed analysis at all. So you might need to do that, you might not need to do that. But anyway, here we go. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to select 3 points that I want to use. Now this is going to create a plane that we're then going to add text to. Now it can kind of do it for you. If you sort of put your mouse in between 3, you can get an idea of what sort of planes you've got. And if you see the target box there, the target size, that will give you an idea of which way the plane's going to work. And let's have a look. Which one would it be the best for me? I think I'm going to go for this one, and this one, which gives me a nice plane here right on the front of this. The next step is to right click here on the plane in any one of these white yellow areas. And I'm going to create text and camera. You can also do things like create 3 layers of text as well, so you can play around with different text and stuff. But I'm just going to create text and camera. And by clicking that, it's now going to add a camera and a text box. So the camera can allow to track it in the 3D environment. And we're just going to add some text to this scene. So here's my text. Let's have a look at it in the environment. And as you can see, even though those points didn't exist here, it still tracks it. I mean, that is an absolutely fantastic effect to have actually put into this version. What I'm going to do is, because it's taking so long to render, I'm just going to take my full size composition and turn it down into a third so it's easier and quicker to render. So here we go. I'm going to come over here, and what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to adjust my text, what it says. So if I double click here on the source name, I'm just going to change this to flip. And it's taking its time to render, but there we go. There it says flip. Then I can come over and change the size of it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the size down to something where I can see it all in shot. And now I can change the size of it. So if I just double click, make sure it's all selected, I can bring the size down to about here. Now just by going into the parameters here, I can go to transform, and I can adjust the X and Y orientation to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flatten it up a bit and probably adjust the position so it's lower down. Tilt it back a bit. And then adjust the Z rotation. And now, if I render the clip quickly, or you see it rendering, the text comes along, and because the camera is actually moving past it, you can actually see the back of the text as well. And off it'll go off the side of the screen. Now, without rendering that fully, you can see the effect is pretty good. But what I'd like you to try now is to combine the first part, which was creating the 3D text, and also creating an environment map, and place that onto this, because you'll notice that now this is a 3D text, a vector 3D text layer. You can come in and you can adjust the materials, and you can adjust the geometry options as well. So you can suddenly create some quite strange, although you can't quite see it there, but you can create some quite amazing effects. You could also put a light in and track it to one of these as well. So what I'd like you to do is just play around with that and see if you can combine both sessions together to create something. Obviously it will take more time to render if you're rendering an environment map or something like that. So be prepared for that. And I hope that's been helpful in incorporating some 3D effects in After Effects. Thanks for watching.